The Body Farm. We're getting close to the end, guys. This is part 9, written by Brian Martinez and brought to you by Midnight Pasta. Quiet days at the bank are nice sometimes, but they do have a tendency to drag unless I keep busy. That's really why I started writing stories in the first place. They're my little distractions from the silence and other things I'd rather not think about. So I was at my desk, taking advantage of the quiet by catching up on some paperwork, when suddenly I had this powerful feeling, this realization that what was happening, all of this, was wrong. It began to sink in that I shouldn't be there, that I hadn't worked there in weeks. And more disturbingly, I couldn't remember how I'd gotten there. Was it all a dream? And if so, had I woken up? "Hey!" I tried to flag down a passing customer, but she didn't answer. She kept walking, as if she hadn't heard me. And in fact, no one was paying attention to me or doing anything but staring ahead or down at their work. I wanted to get a look at the date to get some explanation for all of this, but I couldn't get my computer monitor to turn on. I banged on the keyboard and I clicked the mouse, but nothing happened. Unresponsive. I gave the tower under my desk a hard kick, and the screen clicked on and buzzed to life. Instead of the desktop, the screen was pure white. Then it changed, becoming pink at first and then darkening to a deep red. It was bright, almost blinding. And I tried to click the mouse again, only to find there was none under my hand. No keyboard either. There wasn't even a tower. The one I just kicked was gone. I wheeled back from my desk with my hands in front of my eyes to shield them from the sting of the red light. It became so strong that it filled the entire bank. Ceiling, walls, and the floor, from the desk cubicles to the teller window, to the lobby at the far end. Yet, no one reacted in the slightest. They continued their work and went about their day, bathed in the light, oblivious to the blood color wrapping their eyes. Up out of my chair, I went to Carol, one of my coworkers, and called her name. She didn't look up. I did the same to Vince, and when he didn't respond to the name, I repeated it louder. It was like talking into the wind. The sound of his name was sucked up into the vacuum. I went from desk to desk, banged on the security glass of the teller window, and shouted as loud as I could from the center of the bank. Nothing was heard. Nothing was seen. Time had drained from the room, and I knew I needed to escape before I was drained down with it. The door. I ran through the lobby and out the door, needing to be free of that place. When I burst out of the building, I expected to find the same gray parking lot I'd come out of hundreds of times before. The flat stretch of cracked concrete broken by tall lights every 20 spaces. But instead, I came out to a blur of brown and green and blue. When I stopped myself, there was the sound of seagulls and crashing waves. I was on the island again. I turned around to look back at the bank, but it was already gone. The entire 6-story building vanished like it was never there. My chest seized up with a choking helplessness as I realized there was no way off this island. That no matter how fast I ran or how far I drove, the moment I turned my head, it could all come crashing back. A chunk of rock surrounded by sea was always there, ready to squeeze me, between cold fingers. It was time to focus, time to go home. Where was I on the island? Somewhere near the cave, as far as I could tell. But it was hard to be sure without landmarks. It was daytime, but the woods all looked the same. I took my best guess at the direction of the dock and started off, amazed at how many times I had taken this walk I'd sworn to never take. Not 2 minutes later, I heard a shout from far behind me. It was a man's voice telling me to stop. Without a second thought, or even a first, I ran. I ran like hell and didn't stop running no matter how much the unseen man ordered me to, until I spotted a thick grouping of trees up ahead and made a line for it, aiming for the small space between two large elms. I ran so fast, I didn't feel my feet touch the dirt. The trees came up quickly and I ran between the two elms, hoping to lose what now sounded like 3 or 4 men chasing me through the woods. I came out the other side in a long hallway that echoed with high-pitched sound. Going from outdoors to indoors with no transition at all was jarring, though I knew right away where I was. It was the main research building. The laboratories on the left, and on the right were the cleaning and packing rooms I knew too well. There was no need to turn around. I knew the woods would be gone. My ears adjusted to the echoes. The high-pitched sound was a woman crying. It was coming from the packing room at the end of the hall. And as much as I didn't want to go any closer, I was compelled to seek it out. Maybe because the voice was familiar. It wasn't Terry's, it was someone older, and they sounded like they were in pain. I went forward, went towards the familiar and the painful. When I turned the corner, I'd expected to find the woman, but all I found was the packing room, empty except for the boxes, the stacks of bones and skulls. Yet the crying continued. The woman in pain, her voice, it formed wordless cries for help, painful and destroyed and reaching out. As I walked into the room, it grew louder, closer, and it became clear that the cries were coming from one of the boxes sitting on the work desk. It was sealed with tape. I could swear I could see it shaking. I knew whose voice it was. The woman. I backed away and left her there, shutting the door behind me to muffle the cries. On my way back up the hallway and toward the exit, I peeked into the laboratory and caught sight of a familiar scene. Familiar, yet not. 3 men in lab coats unwrapped a new corpse on the metal slab, pulling a man's head free and peeling back plastic away from his crusted skin. I stopped heading for the exit and approached the door, placed my palms on its window and watched the men work. It was like seeing some moment from a future time, echoing a moment from the past. I could only see the back of the laboratory men, but one of them, the one on the left, had a birthmark on his neck just behind his ear. When I looked again at the corpse they were unwrapping, I found its eyes were open and looking directly at me. It was Bernard. He was dead, drained of blood, yet I could still feel his hatred for me. His accusing eyes stared unblinking as I turned and left. Standing in the guard's office, all of it pristine and unbroken except for the two-way radio, which was in one piece but wouldn't pick up its signal. I found I didn't know where to go anymore, where to run, that I was at a crossroads, in limbo, lost. Then I remembered my phone was in my pocket. There'd been no boat launch to turn it over to. I'd come straight from the bank where my phone was always on me. I fumbled it out of my pocket and tried calling the police first. It rang and rang without an answer. I hung up and tried calling the first number in my contacts. No answer. The next contact. No answer. I dialed 7 random numbers and waited 10 rings before giving up. Just as I was about to put my phone away, it rang in my hand. I answered it and slowly brought it up to my ear. My breathing was heavy, panicked. And as much as I tried to speak, my throat was too tight to let the words out. After a few seconds, an annoyed voice on the other side said, "Hello, who is this?" It was my voice. Cold fear spread through me. The phone fell from my stiff hand and hit the floor, breaking into a dozen shards of glass and plastic that danced across the floor. The connection was lost, along with the phone. Acid burned in my throat, and my stomach felt ready to spill. I looked toward the bathroom, but had to look again when I saw the door had changed. Its location was the same, but the door was entirely different. No longer a bathroom, but the kind that led into an apartment. It even had a bronze number plate screwed to it at eye level. Apartment 403. My apartment. With my hand shaking, I tried the handle but found it was locked. I checked my pockets for keys and came up empty. So I knocked. I knocked on my own door, not knowing what to expect. If it would swing open and I would find myself face to face with myself. Or maybe someone else completely, living in my apartment, taking over my things. At this point, nothing would surprise me. I waited a second. My hand hovered as I considered knocking again. I decided not to. As I looked around at the office, trying to figure out where to go from there. If I should risk jumping into the rough ocean and making a swim for the shore, I heard the unmistakable sound of the door shutting behind me. I swung around to see what had opened it, but there was only a closed door. Not my door, not apartment 403. It was only a bathroom door. I opened it, unlocked now, and looked inside to find the bathroom, and nothing more. I don't know where I am anymore. I'm not even sure if I'm really writing this. I feel lost, exposed, like a hermit crab pulled from its shell. Some part of me is fading fast, and I'm afraid the next time I close my eyes, the next time I blink, it'll be for good. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry about Dad. You told me I would answer for my sins, and you were right.